That genset,
This one,
the Canadian National 2100, is now basically the new yard diesel. It is become larger and more powerful
and more efficient.
and exactly indeed. So gensets are taking over where the SW 900s and 1100s and 1200s basically took the lead originally back in the 50s.
Oh yes, such as
We don't have
these engines.
Yeah, now that we don't have an SD40 in HO, although we have one in N scale. That is, I shouldn't say an SD40, an SW 9 to 1100, 9 to 1200 series, and it was 900 to 1200 horsepower was the idea behind them.
Yes.
But this is now the new variant and the most powerful of yard diesels in Canada today.
Thanks. I think you meant to say Canadian National instead of Canadian Pacific.
Well, what I think of them is the fact that they share yards in Toronto, and there's both CP and CN in the same yards in Toronto. Yes,
of
Toronto's
course.
It's the dividing point in many ways in terms of the two major railways as well. So I think that's kind of interesting too.
And that down there is that's some it's the Athearn FP45.
Yep.
Well, we didn't have any of those.
No, we didn't.
We had these.
Yes. Yep.
The FPA4. Elco.
Yep.
Again, we didn't have any of those.
No, and of course that large Athearn FP45 isn't that particular one. Of course, it's an Amtrak, but of course the GP40, we have
Conrail.
Yeah, we have not necessarily Conrail, but we have GP40s in our yard in Fairview today. GP40s and GP40s.
Oh yes, and we also have F40PHs, like that one right there.
Yeah. And of course that Spectrum GE 44 tonner was basically
this one.
Yeah, that one right there. That was quite a common usage both in PEI and in Nova Scotia.
Right here.
Yeah. And
Thanks.
mainly with
I never knew that until now.
Yeah, so mainly with smaller companies. You wouldn't find that in Fairview Yard, but with say Fundy Gypsum in Hansport in the Valley near Windsor, they would use the center cab 44 tonners. And the center cab 44 tonners and 70 tonners were used until the end of railroading in Prince Edward Island.
Which was in
oh gosh, at least by I think the late 60s, it was just they were just starting to retire the whole system.
I thought it was the 80s.
Maybe so, but I know that the truck traffic was becoming more dominant by the late 60s and into the early 70s, and they were, of course, using the ferry system at that time.
Of course.
Now, it goes without saying that now that the bridge is in place, there's nothing but truck traffic. You know, the span of Green Gables. So as a result of that, but certainly truck traffic was becoming very, very dominant in the ferry systems. And so as a result, the need to basically take rail stock, put them on the ferries, take them off on the other side, that was diminishing quickly. So yeah, the 44 tonner is a lovely example of that. Now we didn't have any of the H1044s, that Wabash one there. That's a very early diesel. And
Fairbanks Morris.
Yes, the Fairbanks Morris one, and that basically is that was the type of early diesels that were run in New York Central. In the middle, in the middle 50s. Yeah.
Oh yes.
As they were continually developing the horsepower because the loads were continually getting larger and the trains
longer and heavier.
So exactly right indeed. So that was kind of an interesting evolution, just looking at some of these and where pieces sort of fit. The RS1, which I don't believe we had in Nova Scotia, but I'm not too sure about that. That one there, that was part of the earlier, that'd be like a late 50s, very early 60s diesel. Again, more powerful than the GE or the Fairbanks Morris piece as well. So they started developing quickly. A lot of competing companies trying to get the share of a very commercial and lucrative marketplace.
Of course.
So that and of course there's an RS10 That would have been certainly present in Canadian
This
National
one.
in the 1960s.
I thought it was the 70s.
Actually, they started in the 60s, and you'll see by the color scheme, but certainly they were very present in the 70s, yes. So interesting, very interesting indeed. So a little walk through history in terms of our display case, if you will.
Thanks.
Yeah. My favorite engine, personally, is the Spectrum Baltimore and Ohio
This one.
280. I think that's a really compact 280 steam that would have basically started evolving around the time of the First World War.
Oh yes, around World War One.
That's right. And developed after the war and into the 20s and into the 30s. That style of engine, that body configuration was the mainstay as a heavyweight engine in both Canada and the United States. And of course that fast became history. Make way for the diesel.
Yes, to make way for these guys.
Exactly, the F series. I mean, the original F series. We see the Canadian National FP9, the F7A, another FP7
This one in
there.
Montreal for
Yeah,
AMT.
exactly. Yes, exactly. But there's certainly well documented evidence that you were talking about F series engines as early as the late 1950s in the United States doing transcontinental work. So they weren't maybe as sleek as some of these, but they were F series engines. Really were indeed. So we don't have a good example of the late 50s, early 60s F series here. These are all later variances. But certainly indeed that they were considered the luxury train of the time. They were passenger related. There were F series that did freight, but they were passenger related as well too, which is really quite interesting, and also profiled, interestingly enough, in many movies of the late 70s and early 50s, pardon me, and early 60s.
Oh yes.
So yeah, so it's just kind of interesting how culture, engineering all seems to blend together at times. So I just thought you'd be interested in talking about that, because you know a fair amount about this as well too. You really do.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You become kind of a bit of a walking encyclopedia in many ways in terms of engines, especially around here, which is kind of nice. Kind of nice indeed. Anyway, I should probably get back up and make sure Pam's
Thanks.
okay. And thank you for taking a moment and having that chat. That's great.
Thanks, Dennis. See you later.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, cool. I wonder where this came from.